What is going on, everyone? Okay, so today we're going to discuss the digital ID, and over the last few months we've seen a big impact in illegal e-bikes in general being seized by the police, and either they're being destroyed or we don't actually 100% know what the outcome of the bikes is. But well, let's just swap over to the PC and we'll get into digital ID. And as you can see from up top here, we have a lot going on. Now, for everyone that's wondering, this is the original document that I was going through, and this is the Gov page. So this is an official document where it was published on the 28th of October 2025, which is literally not even, it's probably about 2 weeks ago now. The Home Office has put out the information with the Gov, sharing how many illegals were actually taken. We've previously gone through this story here already, but what we're going to do is now we're going to break down, for example, 5 million invested. There's 8,000 illegals that were taken and sent home, or they're still in a detention center. I haven't got a clue, but right now this £60,000 per person, okay, times that by 8,000 leaves us with numbers like this. Now I've divided this by 3. This is the main number here, but you see this big number here? This is the number that each one of the main companies could have received in a fine. Now, if we come back to here, notice how it says have their businesses closed. Now, if you have caught 63% of illegals, which is 8,000 people working in the last year, near enough, the companies are open still now for one reason and one reason only, which would be digital ID. Now, if you notice that I'm going back to the original document before we go to the digital ID, there's a whole section in here about digital ID that we've already been through. We've already spoke about all of this here, but there's a few key things that we didn't really pick up on too much. Now you see the data sharing arrangement, and that's being done with the Home Office. So when we're being asked since June, way back, right? Boom. Okay, so look, if we go through here quickly, it tells us November 2023, the government reached out to the 3 companies. April, a few things were changed. By July, June 2025, a new agreement was put out, and look, right? So they were purposely looking for migrants that were working who don't have the right to work. We're all aware of these ID checks that are taking place, and obviously we all thought they were for a different reason, but according to the Gov page, this is literally so that they could locate the locations of the hotels of illegal workers and be able to raid them, find them of where they were going to be. If we look here, there is actually so many different locations that these hotels are being used for. Now, I know people are going to say to me about the AI result from Google, but the AI result is literally all this information here in front of me that's going up and down is where they grab the information and put it into one. So rather than having to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe about 7 different or 10 different articles to be able to find this one piece here that gives me all the information that I need, you know, it even gives you a breakdown of a lot of information, a lot of things that we didn't realize. Like, for example, I didn't realize the government has got a goal until 2029. That's crazy by itself. But right, let's get back to this piece here, okay? Because this is very important, the sharing of the digital ID. Now, if we do go to the digital ID, it breaks down how it works. Now, I've listed out a few key things of what they suggest the digital ID is going to be capable of doing for us. First things first, they say is rent. After that, they mention free childcare, right to work checks. Now, this is where it involves the gig economy, education, social benefits. Now, by social benefits, I'm assuming that's PIP and universal credit and anyone that wants to vote. So that means these, 6 categories, basically pits every single person in the country into digital ID. And this is the information that they acquire. So your name, your date of birth, nationality, etc. Now, this is the part that got me. is the right here. So right now, this right here, yeah, is what is running, I would say, the tests. The tests being what's going to give them the results to say, okay, look, this works. Now everybody's face is being scanned by that system to build the system, you know. It's not just to catch out illegal workers. This is going to do way more. It talks about visas, passports, updating your passport in the future. And I guarantee you it's going to have digital banking and everything more than likely. But I reckon slowly but surely, they'll probably add more features on. And I reckon they've selected these ones here for now because it's not that intimidating to someone, you know. And there's just so much more taking place in here. But the crazy thing is, all of this relates back to it. The hotels, the e-bikes being seized. And then things like this is what made me open my eyes. Is the hack hackable? Okay, look, so if we come back to this page here, this gives you the information about your data and privacy. And it specifically points out, just like contactless payment cards or the NHS app today. Okay, now I remember way back that the NHS app had been hacked, and it's quite obvious because look here, there's no evidence, is what they tell you, okay, of the NHS app being hacked itself. But this is the main key factor. The NHS doesn't have their own server to keep all of the data. So where does that data end up being? It ends up being with a third-party company, which the third-party company ends up getting the cyber attack. Now, this is where it comes into a big factor. Notice when we came onto this page, here was highlighted. That's how much data, 400 gigabytes was stolen. How much information is in that 400 gigabytes? Now, this is where it becomes an issue because they quote that this app is safe, like the NHS. And it also quotes that it's safe like contactless payments. But look how much fraud is done through contactless payment, and that was in 2023. So could you imagine what it is for 2025? You know? And contactless payment is only 19% in fraud because people have other way around being successful of using someone else's bank cards, which is a whole different story in itself. But yeah, so there's so many key factors here that play a big issue. Like if we come over to here, right? How many people in the UK don't have a passport? They suggest that it's 10%, which is 8 million people. So if 8 million people don't have a passport, they don't really need the digital ID, do they? Like, think about that logically. If they don't have a passport, and that's one of the features that the digital ID does, this is just another way to try and track these 8 million people that aren't in the system. It's crazy because you can even go and ask Google things like, this is even more worse. This is literally, and a majority of this is Birmingham. And it shows you of all the bikes that have been getting seized. And recently I came across a video that I couldn't find at the moment that was of a warehouse of e-bikes that have been imported into the country and the police are taking the bike. But yeah, and here's more stories of bikes that have gone up in flames. And I'm pretty sure this is across the UK, even though it says Birmingham. There's a few other stories here that aren't for Birmingham, that may have been reported through Birmingham news stations. It's crazy to think though, because if you don't have the correct way of storing e-bike batteries, it could be an issue. Now, obviously, I know you can see e-bike batteries behind me, but they're currently batteries that I am using. If I wasn't using them batteries, they'd be in fire bags like I've showed you all previously before. But yeah, millions of people in the UK lack access, right? And look here, it says 93% of adults own a smartphone. So this is more about paying attention to what's on your smartphone. And the thing is, a lot of applications, and especially VPNs, they don't work how you think they do. What a VPN actually does, a majority of the time, if it's an application, it's collecting information. It might be keeping you safe from someone else seeing your information, but it's storing it there for someone else, in other words. It's basically there for the right time. The only way you can have a secure VPN is if it's built into your Wi-Fi router. And I would never share the device off the back of the router, because then that's when, not the router, you get what I mean. That information there is valuable and you don't want to be putting it out for other people. How do I know my data will be secure and encrypted? Banking apps. See, that they come back here to mention the NHS. And let's not be funny, right? How many banks in the UK have been hacked recently? Isn't available. Okay, but that's the funny thing, right? Because I know, and a lot of you have seen the same things that I'm seeing online. We've been seeing people having a lot of issues with their banks. Some people were overdrawn by 90 grand with the Metro Bank at one point, and several other banks have been having technical issues. Now, I don't know if this is a part of cybersecurity due to the other things that are taking place in the world right now and companies being attacked. But at the end of the day, that doesn't affect the digital ID. Now, this is probably the most important part that you need to pay attention to, because this is a bill that's going to be put into play quite soon, and it's actually on the third reading. And the third reading comes into play on the 17th, right? And bear in mind, this is the last step. Now, the last step, after that, it's final stages, which is 2 of them, and that's more than likely when it's signed, stamped, and Bob's your uncle. But this is some information on what the bill is, and it's basically about border security, but for immigrants and asylum seekers, for sharing customs data and all the rest of it, basically. But this is the thing, where it doesn't give you too much information on what it's going to stop them from doing, in other words, and how this plays a big factor to digital ID. Because that's how I've managed to find this. I've managed to go through other things that are linked here, like this information, and you just keep going through to the next page and the next page. It might have actually been off of this. Yeah, it is here. Look here, boom. So it takes us through. It then tells us about the bill, what it means. You can then come down and read these 2 links. And I will put all of this information in the bio so that anyone that does want to go and read through it all. But this here doesn't really play a big factor to myself or someone that's legally working in the UK. Also, right, something else that I realized. Okay, so the question being is, how often should right to work be checked? Okay, now, previously when I checked this before, it told me that if you're a British citizen and you have been working for the same company, you shouldn't have to go through a check again. Right to work checks must be done before an employee starts working. Follow-ups must be done before visas expire. Okay, so I don't have a visa, neither does a British citizen. Right, I think we need to ask that in a different way. How often should my work do a right to work check? Your employee should do your right to work check. Beginning of employment. Okay, so you see here, no further checks are needed. So when, okay, right, so this is quite important, right? How often should my work do a right to work check? Your employee should check your rights to work at the beginning of your employment, which means a lot of us recently in the last 6 months or even more than that have had to do new contracts, new right to work checks. And normally I'd have to go to the post office to finalize everything. But with these last maybe 2 checks that I've done with Uber, Deliveroo and Just Eat, I haven't had to. You obviously have had to provide ID, documents, bank statement, the full works. But look, it blatantly tells you that no further checks are needed. So that tells me that with the government saying, hey, look, we know you've made some big mistakes by having all of these legals working and we're hitting you with this big fine each. Bear in mind, this number might not be accurate to each company, but if you work out the amount of people, so we have to take this into a deep fact, the 8,000 workers that were caught illegally working, bear in mind this number here was broken down into 3 because, and it might not be an accurate number, but it's probably going to be closer than we're going to work out for anything else. This is some information that someone from the Home Office had to quote. I'm not going to read it out. Do I feel like there's a better way for this to be dealt with? Me personally, I couldn't suggest one. I feel like there's that many illegals now here working, and it's been proven that they're coming over by the small boat specifically to work in the gig economy. There's so many stories out there. Stories of like, what was it? That they're being given phones and bags soon as they come off the boats, which might not be true. But the thing is, you can blatantly see people filming their journeys across and all of the rest of it. But yeah, like it's confusing because the Home Office isn't hiding any of this information. All of this is public information for anyone that wants to go and read it, wants to go and see it. And me personally, I just don't feel like our information is going to be safe. I feel like we're going to be hacked. I reckon once hackers realize that, okay, a lot of people, say like 80% of the country have used it, and they hack that data, how much is it worth? What are they going to do with it? Who are they going to sell it to? Do they actually sell it to one person? And what happens if the government buys it back and they can't work out if whether someone's been through the information and taken a copy and given it to someone else already before they've even got the information back? Am I now going to have a clone walking around with a digital ID of myself? Which there's also a statement in here that makes it clear that you won't have to use digital ID to confirm who you are to the police. But let's be real, they'll more than likely have a system that will identify who's who. So as you can see people walking around on the road now and the cameras scan your face. And this is something else I want to get into. If you remember when I was going into Morrison's and Boots, and they're like, hey, can you take the mask off? We want to be able to see your face. Well, it's not because they want to see your face or that they feel like you're a thief. It's because the cameras inside of a store like Tesco's and many other shops that have picked this information out, and you can go and find it on Google yourself, have stated that they are running the same thing as what this application is doing with Uber, Deliveroo and Just Eat for running the diagnostics of our face. I don't want to say specific words because I don't want to get flagged in the system, and it's kind of hard, especially with saying digital ID. I'm probably already flagged and popped up, but there is so much you have to look into for this, and there's so much going on that revolves around this digital ID, and it's basically like a trap. So you see with the police vans how they're saying we're looking for people that are wanted. Well, they're also using that technology to scan your face, and where the digital ID is going to come into play is it's going to pop up with your phone, which would then identify who you are in general. Whether you have a mask on, whether they can't see through the mask or not, it's going to be able to match you to who the height of you are, the weight of you, all the rest of it. Everything will play a big key factor. If you don't believe me, I reckon you should all go do some research, check it out for yourself. And yeah, digital ID is definitely going to be one of two things. It's going to be bad if we get hacked. 2, it's going to be good if it controls the amount of illegal workers being able to rent accounts. For me personally, that means I will get a lot more videos, a lot more work. I won't have to deal with, hopefully, drones and the rest of it. If we can tidy up our section, it makes things better. And if you guys didn't realize, from, I think it was 2023, when we started to see the big impact of people that were not paying tax in the gig economy. Remember these days, right here, right, from 2023, and it continued from there. So be aware. They know who's doing what. They know what's going on. The same thing with the Deliveroo telephone number. That will also be something that's linked into the big key factor. I don't know why I'm changing the screen, because obviously you can't see there right now. We're over here. But yeah, on that note, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will get back to the regular schedules. I'm going to get out and go and do some deliveries. But yeah, go and check it out for yourself. There's probably some stuff that I've missed, but that's what I found out from going down that rabbit hole from the first video. And I probably should have put this all together in the first story, but at that time, I never realized how deep it actually was. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.